Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that your smartphone has vanished, your bed is stuffed with straw, and the rooster outside has somehow become your alarm clock. There is no coffee waiting in the kitchen, no running water, no electricity, no bathroom, and if you were hoping to sleep in for just another hour, unfortunately, the village has already decided that your opinion doesn't matter. Welcome to medieval England. Now, before you start imagining shining nights, cheerful peasants singing in flower-filled fields, and cozy cottages straight out of a fantasy film, it is worth remembering one important detail. Most people in the Middle Ages were not kings. They were not nobles. They were certainly not wandering heroes with magical swords. They were farmers. Roughly 9 out of every 10 people spent nearly every day of their lives working the land, and the success or failure of an entire year could depend on whether the weather decided to cooperate for just a few weeks. History often remembers castles. It remembers great battles. It remembers famous kings with impossible names like Edward, Henry, or Richard. But the people who actually kept medieval society alive rarely make it into the history books. Today, we're going to spend the day with them. So, take one last deep breath of clean 21st century air, because the smell you're about to experience is considerably less inspiring. Let's set the scene. It is sometime around the year 1250. The sun has barely begun to rise over the rolling hills of rural England. A light mist hangs over the fields, while thin trails of smoke drift lazily from thatched cottages clustered around a small stone church. From a distance, the village almost looks peaceful. The cottages seem charming. The fields glow softly beneath the morning light. A few sheep wander between wooden fences. Some chickens are already scratching the dirt for breakfast. It is at first glance exactly the sort of place that modern tourists would pay good money to photograph. Living here, however, is another matter entirely. Your house is small, very small. It is built from timber, woven branches, and mud plaster known as wattle and daub. The roof above your head is made from tightly packed straw that keeps out most of the rain, provided the roof was repaired recently, and the local birds have not decided to steal it for nesting material. Inside, there are no separate bedrooms, no hallway, no comfortable furniture. One room serves almost every purpose imaginable. You sleep there, you cook there, you repair your tools there. During harsh winters, you may even share the space with a few valuable animals, because keeping a cow warm might very well keep your family alive. The floor beneath your feet is packed earth. Sometimes fresh rushes are spread across it to absorb moisture and make the room smell slightly less offensive. Unfortunately, after months of smoke, spilled food, muddy boots, and animal droppings, those rushes become less of an air freshener and more of a historical science experiment. Your bed, if we are being generous enough to call it one, is little more than a wooden frame stuffed with straw, dried grass, or whatever soft material your family could gather. Tiny insects have also decided that this arrangement suits them perfectly. They will remain your loyal sleeping companions throughout the night, whether you approve or not. Blankets are precious. Feather mattresses belong to people who own castles. You own optimism. Somewhere nearby, the church bell rings. Not because anyone enjoys waking up before sunrise, because daylight is money. Every hour of useful sunlight matters. Fields need plowing. Animals need feeding. Firewood needs gathering. Water must be carried from the village well. Bread has to be baked. Nothing happens automatically. Every task depends entirely on human hands, and yours are expected to help. Even the youngest children contribute. A 6-year-old might already be chasing geese away from vegetable gardens. An older child could spend the entire day watching sheep, collecting firewood, or scaring birds away from growing grain. Retirement as a concept has not yet been invented. Neither has the weekend. Your first meal of the day is simple. Perhaps yesterday's coarse rye bread. Maybe a bowl of thick pottage. A slow-cooked mixture of oats, barley, peas, onions, and whatever vegetables survive the season. If you're lucky, there might be a little cheese. If you're very lucky, perhaps a single egg. If you're unbelievably fortunate, someone slaughtered a pig recently. That level of excitement might become the biggest event the village discusses for weeks, because in medieval villages, news travels slowly. But gossip moves at astonishing speed, and before the sun has fully climbed above the horizon, your working day has already begun. By now, you've probably accepted one uncomfortable truth. Your new medieval home is not exactly what the travel brochures would have promised. Assuming travel brochures existed, which thankfully for medieval tourism, they did not. From the outside, your cottage looks surprisingly charming. Its timber frame leans only slightly to one side. The thick thatched roof glows warmly beneath the morning sun, and climbing vines creep along the walls as if nature itself approves of the architecture. From a distance, it is almost picturesque. From the inside, well, let us simply say that beauty remains firmly outdoors. Step through the low wooden doorway. Mind your head. Medieval builders were apparently convinced that taller people were a passing trend. The room is dim. Even during the middle of the day, sunlight struggles to squeeze through the tiny shuttered window. Glass is painfully expensive, so most village houses simply make do with wooden shutters or stretched animal skin that lets in a little light without inviting every gust of winter wind inside. Your eyes slowly adjust. Everything smells faintly of smoke. Not because something is on fire, because something is always on fire. In the center of the room sits an open hearth. There's no chimney in many ordinary cottages during this period. Smoke drifts lazily upward before escaping through gaps in the roof, or, just as often, lingering stubbornly inside. Centuries later, archaeologists would discover layers of soot-blackening medieval roof beams, silent proof that generations of villagers lived in what modern building inspectors would probably describe as an ongoing ventilation emergency. The fire never truly dies. Keeping it alive is easier than starting a new one. Matches do not exist. Lighting fresh tinder every morning is slow, frustrating, and occasionally impossible if yesterday's rain soaked everything you own. So a few glowing embers are carefully buried beneath ashes every night, patiently waiting to become tomorrow's breakfast fire. It is perhaps the closest thing medieval people have to pressing the power button. Around the hearth sits nearly everything your family owns. A heavy iron cooking pot, a few rough wooden bowls, several clay jugs, 1 or 2 spoons carved from wood. Knives, thankfully, are shared. Forks, however, those belong somewhere in the distant future. Most meals are eaten with fingers, bread, or a wooden spoon, if fortune has smiled upon your household. Furniture is remarkably limited. A table, perhaps 2 benches, 1 heavy chest. That chest is astonishingly important. It contains clothing, family valuables, important documents if your family possesses any, which, statistically speaking, it probably does not. If the house catches fire, and medieval villages occasionally do exactly that, someone is almost certainly grabbing the chest before anything else. The walls themselves deserve admiration, not because they are especially beautiful, because they somehow continue standing. Thin wooden strips woven together create a framework known as wattle. This lattice is then coated with a mixture of clay, mud, straw, and animal dung known as daub. Surprisingly, it works rather well until heavy rain arrives, or pigs decide to scratch themselves against the walls, or children discover that poking holes into drying mud is endlessly entertaining. Repairs are constant. Every season demands another layer. Every winter steals another piece. Building a medieval house is less like finishing a project and more like entering a lifelong argument with the weather. The roof above you is made from tightly packed reeds or straw. A good thatched roof can last decades if properly maintained. A neglected one quickly becomes home to mice, birds, insects, and occasionally things considerably larger. Cats earn their keep around here, not because they are adorable, although some certainly are. They hunt relentlessly. A single cat protecting the grain supply may save an entire family from starvation. Dogs also serve practical purposes. They guard livestock, warn of strangers, occasionally chase away wolves. Nobody owns pets simply because they are cute. Every mouth must justify the food it consumes, including yours. Storage is another daily challenge. There are no refrigerators, no cupboards filled with neatly labeled jars. Most food hangs from ceiling beams, where rats have slightly more difficulty reaching it. Smoked meat, dried herbs, onions, garlic, bundles of beans, and strings of apples sway gently overhead like an edible chandelier. Unfortunately, the rats remain optimistic. Medieval villages possess an almost supernatural number of rodents. Cats reduce the population. They do need eliminated. If a sack of grain survives the winter untouched, your family may quietly consider it a miracle. Speaking of winter, that charming little cottage suddenly becomes a battlefield. Cold creeps through every crack. The floor freezes. Water inside buckets develops thin sheets of ice. Families huddle together beneath wool blankets while the fire struggles against months of damp weather. Yet oddly enough, summer brings its own problems. The roof becomes unbearably hot. Flies arrive in impossible numbers. Food spoils quickly, and the wonderful smell of livestock drifting in through open doors reminds everyone that medieval air fresheners have yet to be invented. Still, despite everything, this tiny house represents safety. It protects you from rain. It shelters your family. It stores the grain that stands between survival and hunger. For generations, births, marriages, illnesses, arguments, laughter, and final goodbyes all happen beneath the same smoke-blackened roof. To modernize, it seems impossibly cramped. To a medieval villager, it is simply home. And outside that little wooden door, an even longer working day is already waiting. By now, you've survived your first night in a medieval village. Congratulations. Mostly because the bedbugs decided someone else looked more appetizing. Now comes breakfast. If you've been dreaming about fresh pastries, sizzling bacon, fluffy eggs, and a steaming cup of coffee, you're about to experience profound disappointment. Coffee has not yet arrived in Europe. Tea is still a distant curiosity. Chocolate belongs to continents no one in this village even knows exist. Instead, breakfast begins with something medieval people know very well: pottage. If there was ever a dish that ruled the Middle Ages, it was this endlessly adaptable pot of simmering survival. Imagine a thick stew that never truly ends. Yesterday's vegetables become today's lunch. Today's leftovers become tomorrow's breakfast. Tomorrow's breakfast quietly returns for supper. The pot simply keeps going. Sometimes for days. Every household has its own version. Barley, oats, peas, leeks, onions, beans, turnips, cabbage. Whatever happened to grow in the garden eventually finds its way into the bubbling pot hanging over the fire. Meat, occasionally, very occasionally. Contrary to what fantasy films often suggest, ordinary villagers do not eat roasted meat every evening. Livestock are far more valuable alive than on a dinner plate. A cow gives milk. A sheep produces wool. A chicken lays eggs. Killing them simply because you're hungry today is rather like selling your car because you need bus fare. It solves one problem while creating several much larger ones. Pork appears mostly after the autumn slaughter. Families preserve as much as possible by salting, smoking, or drying it before winter arrives. For the rest of the year, even a tiny strip of bacon floating in the family pottage can feel positively luxurious. Bread is another daily companion. Not the soft white loaves stacked neatly in modern supermarkets. This bread is darker, heavier, denser, often made from rye, barley, or maslin, a mixture of wheat and rye. A fresh loaf can last several days. By the end of the week, it possesses enough structural integrity to qualify as a building material. Fortunately, hard bread softens nicely when dipped into hot pottage. Problem solved. Cheese appears fairly often. Simple farmhouse cheese keeps well and provides valuable protein throughout the year. Butter exists too, although wealthier households usually enjoy it more frequently than poorer ones. Milk, surprisingly, is not always consumed fresh. Without refrigeration, it spoils quickly. Turning milk into butter or cheese makes far more practical sense. Ale, however, ale is everywhere. This often surprises modern people. Yes, children drink it too. Before anyone begins judging medieval parenting, it helps to understand that this is usually small ale containing very little alcohol. Water from wells, ponds, or streams can easily become contaminated. Small ale, brewed through boiling and fermentation, is often safer to drink than untreated water. So breakfast might include bread, cheese, pottage, dye waiting, and a mug of weak ale. Not exactly a 5-star hotel buffet, but it keeps people alive. Meals also follow strict seasonal rhythms. Spring is famously difficult. By late winter, food stores begin running low. Salted meat is nearly gone. Grain bins grow emptier each week. Fresh vegetables have not yet matured. Historians sometimes call this the hungry gap. It is precisely what it sounds like. The period when last year's harvest is disappearing long before this year's crops are ready. Many families simply eat less. Summer improves matters. Gardens overflow with fresh herbs, peas, onions, lettuce, and early vegetables. Autumn is a season everyone loves. Harvest fills barns. Apples ripen. Nuts are gathered. Beer is brewed. Animals are slaughtered and preserved. For a few glorious weeks, the village actually feels well fed. Winter, meanwhile, returns everyone to cabbage, onions, beans, dried peas, salted meat, and hope. Hope, admittedly, contributes very few calories. Medieval villagers also eat surprisingly slowly. Meals are opportunities to rest aching muscles after hours of labor. Conversation remains quiet. Children are expected to behave. Food is rarely wasted. Dropping a piece of bread onto the floor is unfortunate. Throwing it away would be nearly unthinkable. Every crumb represents someone's hard work, perhaps your own. Religion also shapes the dinner table. The church observes many fasting days throughout the year. On these days, meat disappears from the menu. Fish becomes more common where available. Inland villages make do with salted herring, dried fish, or whatever the nearest river happens to provide. Some monks reportedly spent nearly half the calendar eating fish instead of meat. The fish, historians suspect, were less enthusiastic about this arrangement. Of course, not every family enjoys the same meals. The village reeve, the miller, or the local priest often eat noticeably better than ordinary field workers. Wealth has many advantages. One of them is seasoning. Spices imported from distant lands, pepper, cinnamon, cloves, saffron, exist, but they are astonishingly expensive. To an ordinary peasant, a pinch of pepper might cost more than several days' wages. Using imported spices in a village kitchen would be rather like sprinkling gold dust onto mashed potatoes. Possible, just not advisable. And yet, despite the simplicity of medieval food, there is one important thing to remember. Most villagers know exactly where every ingredient came from. They planted it, harvested it, ground it, cooked it. Nothing arrives wrapped in paper. Nothing appears mysteriously on supermarket shelves. Every meal represents months of work, favorable weather, and a little good fortune. Because in medieval England, breakfast is never just breakfast. It is proof that another winter has been survived, and another day can begin. By now, you've eaten your breakfast. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't particularly delicious, but it was enough to keep you standing. Which is fortunate, because the real work is only just beginning. If you imagined medieval villagers spending peaceful afternoons strolling through flower-filled meadows while cheerful birds sang overhead, history would like a quiet word. The fields are waiting, and unlike your lord, your priest, or the weather, the fields never negotiate. Let's step outside. The morning mist has almost disappeared. Sunlight now stretches across hundreds of narrow strips of farmland, each carefully marked out by low ridges and shallow furrows. At first glance, the landscape appears strangely untidy. There are no neat rectangular farms, no white fences, no tractors resting beside enormous barns. Instead, the land resembles a giant patchwork quilt stitched together by someone with very little interest in straight lines. Welcome to the open field system. This is how much of medieval England grows its food. Rather than owning one large farm, each family cultivates dozens of long, narrow strips scattered across different fields. One strip may contain wheat, another barley, another lies fallow, deliberately left empty so the exhausted soil can recover. It sounds inconvenient. Because it is. Historians believe the system helped spread risk. If one field flooded, another might survive. If disease ruined one crop, perhaps another would produce enough to prevent starvation. It is agriculture designed not for efficiency, but for survival. Your family's strips are not large. Together, they barely provide enough grain to feed everyone through the year. Every seed matters. Every harvest matters. Every mistake matters. The tools available to you are wonderfully simple, which is another way of saying painfully primitive. The wooden plow waits at the edge of the field. Its iron blade is small. Its frame is heavy. It does not glide effortlessly through the soil. It argues with it. Pulling the plow requires oxen, not horses. Despite what many films suggest, horses remain expensive to maintain. Oxen are slower, much slower, but they are stronger, steadier, and considerably cheaper. They also possess the remarkable ability to look permanently unimpressed by human ambition. Behind the plow walks the farmer, step after exhausting step, hour after hour. Each furrow must remain reasonably straight. A crooked line wastes valuable land. No pressure. Children work too, perhaps not with the plow itself, but there are birds to chase away, stones to collect, bundles to carry, weeds to remove, water to fetch. There's almost no such thing as idle childhood. Every pair of hands contributes. Even elderly villagers continue working for as long as their bodies allow. Retirement, once again, remains several centuries in the future. The seasons control absolutely everything. Spring is frantic. Fields must be plowed, seeds planted, fences repaired. Summer shifts toward maintenance, weeding, haymaking, watching the weather with increasing anxiety. Because one violent storm at the wrong moment can destroy months of work, autumn arrives, and suddenly the entire village moves as one. Harvest time. Nobody stays home. Men, women, children. Even the village priest occasionally lends a hand. Grain must be gathered before rain ruins it. Every hour counts. Every sunny day feels like borrowed time. Harvest is exhausting, but strangely joyful. After months of uncertainty, the crops finally stand before you, golden, heavy, ready, if all goes well. If. That tiny word governs medieval existence, because farming in the 13th century is essentially a very long conversation with nature, in which nature rarely answers politely. Too much rain? The grain rots. Too little rain? The grain dies. A late frost? Goodbye fruit trees. An early winter? Hope you enjoyed eating. Then come the pests. Mice. Locusts in some regions. Birds. Plant diseases nobody yet understands. Wild boars occasionally decide your carefully tended field would make an excellent buffet. There's no agricultural insurance. No emergency relief. No weather forecast warning you that disaster is approaching next Thursday around lunchtime. There's only experience, prayer, and cautious optimism. The Lord, of course, expects his share. Many villagers are not completely free. They owe labor services on the Lord's own fields. Several days every week may belong entirely to him. Your crops wait, while his fields receive attention first. It can feel frustrating. Unfortunately, complaining rarely improves feudal economics. Still, the village survives through cooperation. Neighbors help one another raise heavy beams, repair fences, gather harvests before storms arrive. When someone's ox becomes sick, another family may lend theirs, not always from generosity. Sometimes simply because next year they might need exactly the same favor returned. Community is not merely pleasant, it is necessary. Without it, few villages would survive very long. As afternoon sunlight begins drifting lower across the fields, your back already aches, your hands are blistered, your boots have collected enough mud to qualify as permanent geological features, and tomorrow you will do exactly the same thing again, because medieval farming is not an adventure, it is repetition, patient, demanding, unforgiving repetition. Yet every loaf of bread, every bowl of pottage, every successful winter begins here, in these muddy fields, where ordinary people perform extraordinary amounts of work, simply to see another spring. By now, you've worked the fields. Your shoulders ache, your boots are heavy with mud. Your hands have acquired enough blisters to qualify as a second layer of skin. Surely the working day is finally over. Not quite. Because one of the greatest myths about medieval village life is that people simply finished farming and went home to rest. The truth is rather less relaxing. The fields may release you. The village never does. As the sun begins sinking toward the western hills, smoke rises from every cottage. Children herd geese back into small wooden pens. A boy chases an escaped pig through the lane, with all the dignity such an activity allows. A pair of elderly women gather fallen branches for tomorrow's fire. Somewhere nearby, a blacksmith's hammer continues ringing against glowing iron. The work has merely changed. It has not stopped. Unlike modern life, where work and home often occupy separate places, nearly everything happens here. The cottage is a workshop. The yard is a workshop. The village itself is one enormous workplace. Women begin spinning wool into thread. The spinning wheel, surprisingly, is still uncommon in many parts of Europe during the early 13th century. Instead, most spinning is done with a simple drop spindle. It looks deceptively easy. It is not. Hour after hour, skilled fingers twist loose wool into strong thread with astonishing speed. Without thread, there is no cloth. Without cloth, there are no clothes. Without clothes, English winters become considerably less charming. Nearby, someone repairs a broken basket. Another sharpens a sickle using a whetstone polished smooth by generations of hands. Wooden handles are replaced. Leather harnesses are stitched. Shoes receive another careful patch. Very little is ever thrown away. Everything is repaired. Again, and again, and again. Modern archaeologists often remark how astonishingly resourceful medieval villagers were. Not because they enjoyed repairing things, because buying replacements was rarely an option. A cracked wooden bowl might survive another 20 years after several careful repairs. A torn cloak may receive so many patches that eventually historians struggle to determine which piece was the original garment. Nothing leaves the household until absolutely every possible use has been exhausted. Even children remain busy. The youngest gather eggs. Older boys collect firewood. Girls help card wool or prepare vegetables. Many also scare birds away from gardens one final time before darkness falls. Childhood exists. Leisure exists. But work arrives first. Always. Animals require attention as well. The family cow must be milked, goats fed, chickens counted, pigs checked carefully. Losing a single animal represents far more than inconvenience. It may mean losing milk throughout winter, or next year's breeding stock, or the family's best chance of paying taxes. Animals are wealth with legs. They deserve watching. The village itself grows quieter as evening settles, not silent, just different. Conversations drift through open doorways. Dogs bark occasionally. A baby cries somewhere beyond the next cottage. The rhythmic thump of grain being ground echoes faintly from a nearby hand quern. Without electric lights, darkness changes everything. Candles exist, but they are expensive. Ordinary villagers rely mostly on rushlights, simple dried rushes dipped in animal fat. They burn dimly, they smell faintly unpleasant, and they disappear surprisingly quickly. Every minute of artificial light costs something, so people naturally rise with the sun and sleep not long after it disappears. The stars overhead become astonishingly bright, without cities, without highways, without electric lights stretching across the countryside. The night sky dominates everything. The Milky Way spills across the heavens in breathtaking clarity. To many villagers, these stars are more than beautiful. They're familiar companions, calendars, stories, signs from God. Few people understand astronomy. Almost everyone pays attention to the sky. Inside the cottage, supper resembles breakfast more than anyone would like. Another bowl of pottage. Perhaps fresh bread if baking day happened recently. Maybe onions, maybe cabbage. If fortune smiles, a little smoked bacon seasons the stew. Not enough to call it a feast, just enough to remind everyone what meat tastes like. Meals are surprisingly peaceful. The day's hardest work has ended. Tomorrow's has not yet begun. For a short while, the family simply exists together. Stories are shared. Local gossip quietly circulates. Someone mentions a wolf seen near the forest. Someone else claims travelers have brought strange news from London. Whether the story grows more accurate or less accurate as it passes from cottage to cottage, history politely declines to comment. Entertainment is wonderfully simple. A song, a fiddle if someone owns one. Perhaps a grandmother tells stories about King Arthur, or local saints, or mysterious lights seen dancing over distant marshes. Some tales are certainly true. Some become slightly improved with each retelling. The distinction hardly matters. Stories help long evenings pass, and in a world without books for most people, stories are libraries. Eventually, one by one, the rushlights burn low. The fire is carefully banked beneath fresh ashes, protecting tomorrow's precious embers. Doors are secured. Animals settle quietly. The village slowly disappears beneath darkness. Tomorrow morning, the rooster will announce another identical day with great confidence. The fields will still be waiting. The cows will still require milking. The roof will probably need another repair. Life in a medieval village is rarely dramatic. It is repetitive, predictable, demanding. Yet hidden inside that repetition is something remarkably powerful. Every repaired tool, every shared meal, every story told beside the fire quietly binds the entire community together, not through grand adventures, but through thousands of ordinary evenings. Just like this one, at last. A break from the endless fields, or so you think. Today is market day, which sounds wonderfully relaxing. Perhaps you'll wander through cheerful stalls, sample exotic foods, and enjoy a pleasant afternoon browsing handcrafted goods, while medieval musicians provide a charming soundtrack. History, once again, apologizes for the misunderstanding. Market day is still work. It simply happens to be noisier. Long before sunrise, the village is already awake. Not because anyone enjoys waking in darkness, because the nearest market town may lie 5, sometimes 10, even 15 miles away. And nobody owns a car, nor a bicycle, nor even a reasonably comfortable pair of walking shoes. So everyone who intends to trade begins the journey while stars still hang overhead. The narrow road is alive with movement. Farmers push handcarts filled with onions, beans, eggs, butter, or bundles of wool. Women balance baskets on their heads with astonishing confidence. A shepherd slowly encourages a flock of sheep toward town. Somewhere ahead, a pig loudly announces that it objects to absolutely everything. The pig will continue expressing this opinion for several miles. Roads themselves deserve brief discussion. Calling them roads is generous. Most are little more than dirt tracks worn into the countryside by centuries of feet, carts, horses, and oxen. After rain, they become rivers of mud. Deep wagon ruts fill with water. Boots disappear ankle deep. Carts groan miserably. Travel becomes less a pleasant walk, and more a prolonged negotiation with gravity. Eventually, the market town appears. Its church tower rises above timber-framed houses. Smoke curls lazily into the morning sky. Already, the streets buzz with activity. Hundreds of people have arrived from villages scattered across the surrounding countryside. For many peasants, this is the busiest place they will ever see. The marketplace itself is wonderfully chaotic. No neat supermarket aisles, no carefully arranged displays. Instead, voices rise from every direction. A butcher loudly advertises fresh pork. A baker proudly displays warm loaves still smelling of the oven. A fishmonger insists today's herring are fresher than yesterday's, which is technically true. A potter arranges rows of sturdy clay bowls. A blacksmith displays horseshoes, knives, nails, and iron tools. Nearby, a traveling merchant unfolds brightly colored cloth imported from distant Flanders. To an ordinary villager, the colors seem almost magical. Deep scarlets, rich blues, golden yellows, luxury woven into fabric, far beyond most people's budgets. Money exists, of course. Silver pennies circulate widely, but surprisingly, much trading still happens through exchange. A basket of eggs may become a block of cheese. Wool might purchase a repaired plow blade. Butter can pay for new leather shoes. Everything possesses value. Everything can become currency. The smells are unforgettable. Fresh bread, wood smoke, cheese, horses, wet wool, spices, sweating livestock, beer, and unfortunately, open drains. Medieval sanitation remains. A work in progress. Let's leave it there. Markets are not merely places to buy things. They are information exchanges. News spreads faster here than almost anywhere else. Someone claims the king is raising another tax. Another traveler insists fighting has broken out across the sea. A wandering monk describes miracles witnessed at a distant shrine. Whether every story is true hardly matters. For most villagers, this is how the wider world enters their lives. Children stare wide-eyed at entertainers. A juggler tosses wooden balls into the air. A storyteller gathers laughing listeners around him. A traveling musician plays a fiddle while singing ballads about saints, kings, and heroic battles that probably become slightly more heroic with every performance. Even the local thief sees opportunity. Markets attract crowds. Crowds attract distracted people. Distracted people often discover their purse strings were less secure than they believed. Fortunately, public punishment for thieves is memorable enough that many reconsider their career choices. Not all, just enough. Religion remains impossible to ignore. The church overlooks the marketplace. Priests mingle among the crowds. Holy days often coincide with large markets, bringing even greater numbers of visitors. Commerce and faith walk comfortably beside one another. One feeds the body, the other, depending whom you ask, feeds everything else. For young villagers, market day offers another rare excitement. Potential husbands, potential wives. Many marriages begin not through dramatic romance, but through repeated meetings during market days, perhaps while buying cheese. History has witnessed stranger beginnings. As afternoon slowly fades, business winds down, unsold goods are packed away, coins are counted carefully, purchases are tied securely onto carts. The long walk home begins. Everyone carries something: a new cooking pot, a repaired tool, a length of cloth, salt, iron nails, perhaps simply fresh news to share beside tonight's fire. By sunset, the village grows lively once again. Neighbors gather outside cottages asking familiar questions. How was the market? What did wheat cost? Did you hear about the lord across the river? Is it true wolves were seen near the northern woods? Within minutes, the entire village knows everything, or at least everything someone confidently claimed to know. Because in medieval England, the market is far more than a place to trade. It is where isolated villages briefly connect with the wider world, where goods change hands, stories change shape, and ordinary people, for just one busy day, feel connected to something much larger than their own quiet little village. If you've managed to survive the fields, the market, and another supper featuring cabbage in at least 3 different forms, congratulations. Today you are going to church. Now, before you picture a quiet Sunday morning lasting perhaps an hour, you should lower your expectations considerably, because in medieval England, the church is not merely where people worship, it is where life happens. Imagine standing in the center of your village. There are perhaps 40 cottages, a few barns, one blacksmith's forge, a muddy lane wandering toward the fields, and towering above them all, the parish church. Its stone walls have stood longer than anyone alive can remember. Children are baptized here, couples are married here, the dead are buried beside it. If a villager is born, lives, and dies without ever traveling farther than the next valley, the church will quietly witness every stage of that journey. Its bell controls the rhythm of daily life. Long before clocks become common, the bell tells people when to wake, when to pray, when to gather, when danger approaches, when someone has died. The sound carries across fields and forests alike. To medieval ears, it is more reliable than the sunrise itself. Inside, the church feels unlike any other building in the village. The air is cool. Even during summer, sunlight filters through narrow windows, scattering soft beams across worn stone floors. Candles flicker before painted statues of saints. The scent of incense lingers in the air. To someone who spends every day surrounded by mud, smoke, and livestock, this place feels almost otherworldly. Most villagers cannot read. That hardly matters here. The walls themselves tell stories. Brightly painted scenes depict Noah's Ark, the birth of Christ, St. George fighting the dragon, the Last Judgment. These images are the village's picture books. They teach lessons more effectively than any written page. Children stare upward in fascination. Adults do the same, because every painting carries meaning. The service itself is conducted almost entirely in Latin, which presents an interesting problem. Very few ordinary villagers actually understand Latin. They recognize familiar prayers, certain phrases, the rhythm, the music, but not every word. Modern people sometimes find this surprising, yet for medieval worshippers, understanding every sentence is not always the point. The ceremony itself feels sacred. The mystery matters. Faith lives in ritual as much as language. The priest, however, serves another role beyond leading worship. He's one of the few educated men in the village. Need someone to write a letter? Ask the priest. Need advice during a dispute? Ask the priest. Need the date of an important feast day? Once again, ask the priest. He may even keep records of baptisms, marriages, and burials. Long before government offices exist nearby, the parish church quietly functions as the village archive. Church attendance is not exactly optional. Missing Mass without good reason attracts uncomfortable attention. Not because villagers enjoy policing one another, because everyone notices. Small communities notice everything. If your family fails to appear on Sunday, neighbors begin asking questions before the service has even ended. Sometimes concern motivates them, sometimes curiosity. Occasionally, those are remarkably similar emotions. Religious festivals bring rare excitement. Christmas, Easter, Pentecost, harvest celebrations, the church fills with flowers, candles, music, and processions. For ordinary villagers, these holy days break the routine of agricultural life. Work pauses, families gather, special meals appear whenever possible. Children eagerly anticipate feast days almost as much as presents. Though presents remain rather less common, the churchyard itself never stays empty. People meet friends there, discuss village business, arrange marriages, hire laborers, exchange gossip. Children play among ancient gravestones until someone reminds them, perhaps, this is not entirely appropriate. Even then, they usually continue playing. Life and death occupy the same space quite comfortably. The cemetery surrounding the church is not frightening. It is familiar. Generations of ancestors rest beneath its grass. Nearly every family has someone buried there. When villagers walk past, they are walking among relatives, not strangers, of course. The church also expects something in return, the tithe. Traditionally, 1/10 of certain produce belongs to the church. Grain, lambs, eggs, wool, depending upon local custom. Nobody particularly enjoys giving away part of the harvest, yet most people accept it as part of life. Just as inevitable as winter, or taxes, or cabbage, there are lighter moments too. Not every priest is solemn. Some are known for terrible jokes, others keep bees, some brew excellent ale. A few develop reputations for sermons that continue so long. Even the saints might quietly check the time. Human nature, it seems, changes very little across the centuries. As evening approaches, the church bell rings once more across the fields. Its sound drifts over cottages, pastures, woodlands, and distant farms. Every villager hears it. Perhaps not everyone listens, but everyone knows what it means. Because in medieval England, the church is not simply the heart of the village. It is its memory, its calendar, its school, its courthouse, its gathering place, its final resting place. And whether life brings joy, sorrow, birth, marriage, or death, almost every path eventually leads back to these ancient stone walls. By now, you've survived another week. The fields have been plowed. The church bells have rung. Market day has come and gone. Surely life is beginning to feel predictable. Then someone in the village announces, a wedding. Now, if you're imagining flower-covered aisles, romantic vows written from the heart, and dancing until midnight, you may have wandered into the wrong century. Because in medieval England, marriage is rarely about finding your soulmate. It is about finding someone who can help you survive winter. Let's begin with courtship, or rather, what passes for courtship. The village is small. Everyone already knows everyone else's family. There are very few surprises. If Thomas speaks to Alice beside the village well, half the village notices. If they speak again the following week, the other half notices too. Privacy, as a concept, has not yet been invented. Young people certainly fall in love. Historians are quite confident about that. Poetry survives. Love songs survive. Letters survive. Human hearts, thankfully, behave much as they always have. But marriage itself usually involves far more practical conversations. Can the couple support themselves? Do their families approve? Who owns enough land? Who brings livestock? Who inherits which strips of farmland? Romance may begin the discussion. Bread usually finishes it. For most peasants, weddings do not involve extravagant celebrations. There are no towering cakes, no photographers asking everyone to smile, no carefully choreographed first dances. Instead, the ceremony takes place before the parish church, sometimes even outside its doorway. The priest blesses the union. Witnesses gather. Promises are exchanged. And suddenly, two households become one. The bride's clothing is rarely white. That tradition belongs to a much later age. Instead, she wears her finest dress, perhaps dyed blue, green, or reddish brown, whatever represents the family's best garment. It may later become her everyday dress again. Nothing is worn only once. The groom looks remarkably similar to how he looked yesterday, perhaps with cleaner boots, if fortune smiles. After the ceremony comes the feast. Now, feast is a wonderfully flexible word. For wealthy nobles, it might mean roasted swans and imported wine. For villagers, it means everyone eats better than usual. Fresh bread, ale, cheese, pies if ingredients allow. Perhaps roasted pork or mutton if the family can afford such luxury. The greatest gift is not extravagance. It is abundance. Nobody leaves hungry. Music appears almost magically. Someone produces a fiddle. Another plays a pipe. Children run between tables. Older villagers clap in rhythm. Even people who spent the morning arguing over wandering sheep somehow manage to dance together by evening. The celebration belongs to the whole community because every marriage strengthens the village itself. Soon enough, reality quietly returns. The newly married couple must build a life together. Often, they move into an existing family home, not because they particularly dream of living with their parents, because building an entirely new house requires time, money, timber, and permission. Space inside medieval cottages is already limited. Adding two more adults simply means everyone sleeps slightly closer together. Again, privacy remains wonderfully theoretical. Children usually arrive quickly, sometimes within a year, sometimes sooner than modern wedding guests might comfortably calculate. Infant mortality, however, shadows every family. Many children never reach adulthood. Every birth brings both celebration and quiet fear. Mothers face enormous danger during childbirth. Without modern medicine, even an ordinary delivery can become fatal. It is one of the greatest risks a medieval woman will ever face. Yet despite the hardships, families continue growing, because without children, there is nobody to work the fields, nobody to care for aging parents, nobody to inherit the farm. Children are not merely loved, they're essential. Marriage also creates responsibility. A husband owes protection. A wife manages much of the household economy. She brews ale, bakes bread, raises poultry, spins wool, keeps accounts in her own practical way. Many women work beside their husbands in the fields as well. Life demands partnership, not perfection. Arguments happen. Of course they do. Imagine sharing one small room, working from sunrise to sunset, living through failed harvests, raising several children, and owning perhaps 3 wooden spoons between the entire household. It would be surprising if nobody ever disagreed. Yet medieval court records also reveal something comforting. Many couples cooperate remarkably well. Neighbors testify for one another. Widows successfully manage farms after their husbands die. Husbands leave property to wives. Real affection quietly exists beneath the practical necessities. It simply expresses itself differently than modern romance often does. Perhaps through repairing a roof together, sharing the last piece of bread, walking home after market day, or sitting silently beside the fire after another exhausting harvest. Love, when it appears, often wears work clothes as darkness settles over the village. The wedding feast slowly comes to an end. The music fades, the candles burn low. Tomorrow morning, the newly married couple will wake before sunrise. The cow still needs milking. The chickens still require feeding. The fields still wait patiently beyond the village. Marriage changes many things, but it does not persuade medieval agriculture to take the day off. And perhaps that is the quiet truth hidden beneath every medieval wedding. The vows matter, the blessings matter, the celebration matters. But what truly builds a marriage is not one joyful day. It is thousands of ordinary mornings. Faced together, you wake before dawn. At first, something feels different. The village is unusually quiet. No hammer rings from the blacksmith's forge. No children chase chickens through the lane. Even the dog seems strangely subdued. Then you hear it. A church bell, not the familiar bell calling people to prayer. A slower bell, one measured stroke, followed by another, and another. In medieval England, everyone recognizes that sound. Someone has died. Life in a medieval village is filled with routines, planting, harvesting, market day, Sunday mass. But woven quietly through every season is something no one can escape: illness. Unlike today, there are no hospitals nearby, no antibiotics, no ambulances racing down country roads. If sickness arrives, it arrives like an unexpected guest who refuses to leave. Most families know a surprising amount about everyday medicine, not because they studied at universities, because experience has taught them. A grandmother gathers willow bark to ease pain. A mother boils herbs into bitter teas. Honey is spread across wounds. Garlic is believed to drive away infection. Some of these remedies actually help. Modern medicine has confirmed that willow bark contains compounds related to aspirin. Honey possesses natural antibacterial properties. Not everything medieval people believed was superstition. Sometimes, centuries of observation quietly stumbled toward real science. Other treatments are less convincing. A headache might be blamed on an imbalance of bodily humors. A fever could be treated by bloodletting. Leeches become remarkably popular medical assistants. To be fair, nobody asked the leeches whether they enjoy the arrangement. The village healer occupies a curious place in society. She is often an older woman. She knows which herbs ease coughing, which plants soothe burns, which roots should never be eaten. Some people trust her completely. Others whisper that perhaps she knows a little too much. The line between healer and suspected witch can become dangerously thin. Fortunately, most villages simply hope she continues making effective herbal remedies. The parish priest also visits the sick. His purpose is not merely medical, he brings comfort, prayer, confession. If someone appears close to death, the priest administers the last rites. In a deeply religious world, preparing the soul matters every bit as much as treating the body. Children face particular danger. Modern parents worry when a child develops a fever. Medieval parents worry too, only with far fewer ways to help. Measles, smallpox, whooping cough, dysentery. Illnesses that modern vaccines or medicine now control can sweep through villages with frightening speed. Many children never celebrate their 5th birthday. Every family carries quiet memories of sons, daughters, brothers, or sisters lost far too early. Even healthy adults understand how fragile life remains. A small cut while chopping wood can become infected. A rotten tooth may spread disease throughout the body. A winter cough can slowly become pneumonia. There's no guarantee that tomorrow will resemble today. Death rarely announces itself politely. Yet life continues, remarkably. People do not spend every day consumed by fear. Because illness is so common, it becomes woven into ordinary existence. Neighbors care for one another. Meals are shared. Children are watched while parents recover. The village survives because everyone understands that next time, they may need help themselves. Modern archaeologists studying medieval cemeteries often discover evidence of astonishing resilience. Healed broken bones, old injuries that knitted successfully. People who survived terrible accidents long enough for extensive healing to occur. Someone cared for them, fed them, protected them. Long before organized hospitals, communities quietly became healthcare systems. Eventually, the slow church bell rings again. This time, for a funeral. The entire village gathers outside the stone church. The coffin is simple, usually little more than rough wood, sometimes only a burial shroud. There are no elaborate monuments, no polished marble, only familiar faces standing together beneath gray English skies. The priest speaks in Latin. Most villagers understand only fragments, yet everyone understands grief. The grave is dug in the churchyard beside generations already resting there. A father, a grandmother, an infant lost one harsh winter decades earlier. Death is never far away, yet neither is memory. As the final handfuls of earth fall softly onto the grave, life quietly resumes. Someone still needs to milk the cow. Bread still needs baking. Tomorrow's firewood remains uncollected. The fields, as always, continue waiting, and perhaps that is what surprises modern historians most. Not how often medieval people encountered death, but how courageously they continued living anyway. Every sunrise remained worth greeting, every harvest worth planting, every wedding worth celebrating, even in a world where tomorrow was never promised. Because in the end, the greatest strength of a medieval village was not its walls, nor its church, nor even its harvest. It was the simple determination of ordinary people to keep going, one ordinary day after another. The village blacksmith was already awake long before you even considered opening your eyes. Not because he enjoyed mornings, because iron does not wait. The forge sleeps only when the fire dies, and if the fire dies completely, yesterday's hard work disappears into cold ash. So while the rest of the village still dreams beneath wool blankets, the blacksmith is already feeding charcoal into the furnace, listening to the slow roar that sounds almost like a dragon clearing its throat. Welcome to another ordinary medieval morning. And today, unfortunately for your ears, you work next door. The first thing you notice isn't the heat, it's the sound. Clang, clang, clang. Not loud enough to shake the earth, but steady enough that after several hours, your brain simply accepts it as another law of nature, somewhere between gravity and rain. The blacksmith, meanwhile, barely notices. He has spent decades listening to hammers strike iron thousands of times every single day. His hearing is probably negotiating an early retirement. Most villagers think of the blacksmith as the man who makes swords. That is mostly because stories love swords. Reality loves horseshoes. A medieval village needs very few swords. It needs hundreds of horseshoes, broken hinges, cooking hooks, door latches, nails, axes, plow blades, knives, chains, locks, scythes, kitchen pokers, fire tongs, iron hoops for barrels. If something contains metal, chances are it passed through this smoky workshop. Without the blacksmith, the village doesn't simply become less convenient. It slowly stops functioning. Farmers cannot repair broken plows. Carpenters cannot fasten beams together. Millers cannot fix damaged gears. Even the church eventually needs new iron fittings for its heavy wooden doors. The forge quietly supports almost every profession in medieval life. And unlike many craftsmen, the blacksmith cannot simply produce everything in advance. Most jobs arrive broken. A farmer drags in a bent plow after striking buried stone. A wagon driver appears holding an axle that snapped halfway to market. Someone brings a kettle with a cracked handle. Another customer carries only half of an axe. Repairs never stop. Iron is expensive. Throwing it away would be foolish. Instead, old metal is heated, hammered, reshaped, and given another life. Modern recycling centers would probably approve. The workshop itself feels surprisingly dark. Outside, bright sunlight fills the village. Inside, almost every window remains small. Too much wind cools the forge. Too much light makes it difficult to judge the glowing color of heated metal. Experienced smiths don't use thermometers. They read temperature by color. Dark red, cherry red, bright orange, yellow white. Each shade tells them exactly when the iron is ready. Too cold, and it cracks. Too hot, and it burns. Centuries before industrial science, skilled blacksmiths possessed astonishing practical knowledge simply by watching glowing metal every day. The apprentice stands nearby, pumping the great leather bellows. This may look easy. It isn't. Keeping a constant stream of air flowing into the furnace requires rhythm and endurance. Stop pumping for too long, and the fire weakens. Pump too hard, and sparks explode across the workshop. The apprentice quickly learns that even breathing seems easier than operating bellows for hours. Of course, apprenticeship includes many other glamorous responsibilities: sweeping ashes, carrying charcoal, fetching water, holding hot iron with tongs, cleaning tools, getting shouted at again, and occasionally being blamed for problems that existed before sunrise. Education looks slightly different in the Middle Ages. The forge smells unlike anywhere else in the village. Hot charcoal, burned wood, scorched leather, sweat, smoke, wet earth. A faint metallic scent fills the air whenever glowing iron touches water. When the smith plunges a finished blade into the quenching barrel, hiss! Steam bursts upward like morning fog escaping from a lake. Children standing outside always jump. Adults barely glance over. They've heard this sound thousands of times. Every finished tool ends with the same dramatic cloud of steam. Water barrels stand everywhere, not just for cooling metal, for fires. A single flying spark can ignite wooden walls frighteningly quickly. Entire medieval towns have disappeared because one workshop burned slightly longer than intended. The blacksmith understands this better than anyone. His profession balances creation and destruction with every strike of the hammer. Despite his importance, the blacksmith is rarely wealthy. Iron costs money. Charcoal costs money. Tools wear out. Customers sometimes pay weeks late. Others pay with grain instead of coins. One farmer offers cheese. Another promises labor during harvest. A third swears he'll return with payment after selling sheep at market. Sometimes he does. Sometimes he mysteriously forgets. Business has always been complicated. Still, the forge remains one of the busiest places in the village. People gather here not only for repairs, but for conversation. While waiting, neighbors exchange news. Someone mentions wolves near the forest. Someone else reports a wedding. Another whispers about travelers bringing strange diseases from distant towns. Before newspapers, before radio, before the internet, the forge serves as one of the village's unofficial information centers. News spreads almost as quickly as sparks. By evening, the blacksmith finally slows. Not because the work is finished, because darkness makes precise metalwork dangerous. The fire gradually shrinks. The hammer grows quiet. The last glowing horseshoe cools beside yesterday's repairs. Tomorrow morning, before anyone else wakes, the roaring furnace will begin again. And somewhere beyond your window, clang, 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 the soundtrack of medieval life resumes exactly where it left off. Before the sun has even climbed above the distant hills, the village is already awake. Not because the harvest demands it, not because the priest has rung the morning bell. Today is market day. And in a medieval village, market day feels remarkably close to a holiday. Well, a holiday where everyone still works incredibly hard, but at least they're doing it somewhere more interesting. Instead of spending the day bent over muddy fields, people wash their faces a little more carefully. The family's best wool tunic finally comes out of the wooden chest. Boots are brushed. Hair is combed. Even the children look surprisingly clean. At least, for the first 10 minutes. The journey begins early. Some families walk several miles. Others arrive with small carts, pulled by sturdy oxen. A few fortunate villagers own horses. Most simply rely on their own feet. Fortunately, medieval people possess something modern humans often underestimate: practice. Walking 5 or 6 miles before breakfast hardly seems unusual. By mid-morning, the market town is alive. The narrow streets overflow with voices. Merchants shout from wooden stalls. Chickens complain loudly from wicker baskets. Dogs wander hopefully beneath tables, searching for dropped scraps. Someone argues passionately over the price of onions. Someone else insists their cheese is the finest in 3 counties. Neither side appears willing to surrender. The air itself smells wonderfully confusing. Fresh bread, roasted meat, wood smoke, leather, wet wool, beeswax candles, ale, fish, spices carried from lands so distant that most villagers cannot even imagine where they grow. For many peasants, this is the widest window they will ever have into the outside world. Your own shopping list is surprisingly practical. Salt, iron nails, lamp oil, Perhaps a new knife if fortune has smiled upon the harvest this year. Salt deserves special attention. Today it sits quietly in every kitchen. During the Middle Ages, it is astonishingly valuable. Without refrigeration, salt preserves meat throughout the winter. Without enough salt, a family may simply run out of safe food long before spring arrives. Sometimes the most ordinary purchases matter the most. Money itself is scarce. Many villagers own only a handful of silver pennies, so trade often happens through barter. A basket of eggs, a sack of oats, a length of homespun wool, several chickens, perhaps even a young pig. Everything possesses value if someone else happens to need it. A merchant from a nearby city displays colorful cloth unlike anything produced locally. Brilliant scarlet, deep blue, rich green. The dyes alone cost more than some villagers earn in months. People stop simply to admire them. Looking, thankfully, remains free. Near another stall, the blacksmith examines imported iron bars. The village carpenter searches for better chisels. A monk purchases ink and parchment. Meanwhile, children become completely fascinated by a traveling entertainer juggling wooden balls. They have likely never seen anything remotely similar. Neither, to be honest, have several adults. Market day sells far more than goods. It sells stories. Travelers arrive from distant counties carrying news that spreads through the crowd faster than smoke. A new bridge has collapsed. The king has announced another tax. Bandits have been seen along the northern road. A monastery is building an enormous church, somewhere beyond the sea. A crusade continues. Nobody owns newspapers. Nobody receives daily updates. Instead, information travels inside people's conversations. By lunchtime, an entire kingdom's worth of gossip has crossed the marketplace. Of course, not every story deserves belief. One merchant confidently claims to have seen a fish larger than a cottage. Another swears that somewhere in Africa there are people with dog heads. A passing traveler insists dragons once lived in Wales. The remarkable thing is, nobody can immediately prove him wrong. The medieval world still contains enormous blank spaces on its mental map. Reality and imagination comfortably share the same marketplace. The church also watches over market day. Weights and measures receive careful inspection. Cheating customers is considered both dishonest and sinful. Some markets even begin with prayers asking God to bless fair trade and honest dealings. Not every merchant listens equally well. By late afternoon, the crowds begin thinning. Coins have changed hands. Goods have found new owners. Friendships have been renewed. Arguments have been settled. New arguments have quietly begun. The long walk home awaits. Baskets feel heavier now, not only because they're filled with purchases, but because every family carries home something impossible to weigh. New ideas, fresh rumors, stories of distant places, small glimpses of a world far larger than their own village. As evening settles across the countryside, the market slowly disappears behind winding country roads. Tomorrow, everyone returns to ordinary life. The fields still need tending. The animals still require feeding. The blacksmith's hammer will ring once more. Yet for one precious day, life has felt just a little bigger, a little louder, a little more colorful, and perhaps that is exactly why medieval people look forward to market day with such excitement. Because in a world where most days looked remarkably alike, market day reminded everyone that beyond the next hill, there was always another story waiting to be told. Imagine waking one ordinary morning, only to discover that your future husband has already been chosen, not by you, not even by him, but by two fathers, one mother, and perhaps a village priest who has quietly nodded his approval over a cup of ale. Welcome to marriage in a medieval English village. If you are hoping for candlelit dinners, dramatic declarations of love, or surprise bouquets, you may find yourself about 7 centuries too early. For most ordinary villagers, marriage is not primarily about romance. It is about survival. A household with 2 healthy adults simply has a better chance of making it through winter. One person can tend the fields, while another cares for livestock. One bakes bread, while the other repairs fences. When harvest arrives, 4 hands accomplish far more than 2. Love, if it comes, is considered a wonderful bonus, but food comes first. Most young people still know each other long before marriage. Villages are small, very small. The boy who eventually becomes your husband may have spent years chasing the same geese, attending the same church services, and helping bring in the same harvest. There are very few strangers here. Everyone knows everyone else's parents. Everyone remembers everyone else's embarrassing childhood stories. Privacy, unfortunately, has yet to be invented. Courtship itself is surprisingly modest. There are no expensive engagement rings, no elaborate proposals beneath fireworks. A young man may simply begin visiting a young woman's family more often. Perhaps he helps repair her father's fence, carries water, assists during harvest. These quiet acts speak louder than grand romantic speeches ever could. Parents observe everything. If the young man works hard, treats others fairly, and owns at least a little land or useful skill, conversations quietly begin. Marriage negotiations sound far less romantic than modern dating. How much land accompanies the union? Can the couple support themselves? Will both families benefit? Who inherits which cow? Yes, occasionally the future of an entire marriage depends partly upon livestock. The cow, meanwhile, remains blissfully unaware of its importance. Wedding celebrations themselves are joyful. After all, life offers precious few opportunities for large gatherings. The church bells ring. Neighbors arrive wearing their best clothing. The priest blesses the union inside the familiar stone church. Unlike modern ceremonies, many medieval weddings happen outside the church door before moving indoors for Mass. Marriage is both a public promise and a religious sacrament. Everyone witnesses it, everyone remembers it, and everyone will probably discuss it afterward. The feast that follows is often the largest meal many villagers enjoy all year. Fresh bread, roasted meat if the family can afford it, cheese, ale, perhaps even sweet pastries flavored with precious honey. Musicians appear carrying simple fiddles or pipes. Children dance with remarkable enthusiasm. Adults pretend not to notice when the dancing becomes slightly less graceful after several mugs of ale. For one glorious evening, the worries of taxes, poor harvests, and aching backs quietly disappear. Tomorrow they will all return. Tonight can wait. Marriage, however, marks not an ending, but the beginning of considerably more work. A new household must now be managed. Firewood gathered, fields cultivated, animals fed. Children eventually arrive. Sometimes many children. Sadly, not all survive infancy. This harsh reality shapes medieval families profoundly. Parents love deeply, yet live with constant uncertainty. Life remains fragile. Husbands and wives work side by side nearly every day. The idea that husbands earn money while wives stay home would seem strangely unfamiliar here. Both labor constantly. Women milk cows, gather eggs, spin wool, bake bread, tend gardens, care for children, sometimes even help during harvest or manage livestock. Men plow fields, repair buildings, cut timber, maintain fences. Yet whenever extra hands are needed, everyone joins in. The family survives together, or struggles together. Disagreements naturally occur. After all, sharing one tiny timber cottage leaves very little room for dramatic exits. There is no guest bedroom, no hotel, no weekend away. Usually, people learn to solve arguments because there are few alternatives. The village itself quietly encourages stability. Neighbors notice everything. If a husband mistreats his wife, people talk. If a wife abandons household responsibilities, people talk. If someone sneezes unusually loudly, someone is probably discussing it before supper. Community life offers comfort. It also offers remarkably little anonymity. Modern historians studying medieval court records occasionally uncover touching moments. Couples leaving gifts to one another in wills, widows carefully preserving husbands' belongings, old men requesting burial beside wives who died decades earlier. These documents remind us that genuine affection certainly existed. People laughed together, worked together, grieved together. Love may not always have begun the marriage, but often it quietly grew within it. As evening settles over the village, smoke curls gently from cottage chimneys. Inside one small home, a newly married couple shares their first ordinary supper together. No royal banquet, no heroic adventure, just coarse bread, warm stew, a crackling fire, and tomorrow's work already waiting beyond sunrise. Perhaps that is the secret most modern people overlook. Medieval marriage was rarely built upon fairy tales. It was built upon partnership, upon endurance, upon countless ordinary days shared side by side. And sometimes that proves to be its own quiet kind of romance. As the sun slowly sinks behind the hedgerows and smoke curls lazily from dozens of cottage chimneys, another kind of workday quietly begins, not in the fields, not at the forge, but inside the village tavern. If you've imagined medieval taverns as noisy halls packed with sword fights, mysterious strangers in dark cloaks, and someone dramatically slamming a tankard onto a table, you may have been watching slightly too many fantasy films. Reality is considerably quieter and far more interesting. The village alehouse, or tavern depending on the region, is not merely a place to drink. It is the social heart of the community. Think of it as the village cafe, community center, town hall, business office, and neighborhood gossip headquarters, all squeezed beneath one timber roof. After 12 exhausting hours working the fields, people crave conversation almost as much as supper. Inside, the room is warm. The thick oak beams overhead are blackened from decades of smoke. Rushes cover the earthen floor. Simple wooden benches crowd around rough-hewn tables polished smooth by generations of elbows. The fireplace crackles constantly. Its warmth draws people inside long before winter truly arrives. The first surprise for many modern visitors is that almost everyone drinks ale, even children, not because medieval people enjoyed encouraging bad habits, because clean water cannot always be trusted. Many wells become contaminated by animals, waste, or simple neglect. Ale, brewed by boiling water during production, is often the safer choice. Fortunately, most everyday ale contains remarkably little alcohol, modern beer would likely seem much stronger. Children sip weak, small ale. Adults enjoy slightly stronger brews after long days of labor. Nobody expects to become gloriously intoxicated every evening. Tomorrow's harvest still begins at sunrise. The tavern keeper knows nearly everyone by name. He knows who still owes money, who recently sold 2 pigs, whose daughter became engaged, whose roof collapsed during last week's storm. Without trying, he has become the unofficial historian of the village. A farmer enters carrying muddy boots. Soon afterward arrives the blacksmith. The miller follows. Eventually, the carpenter squeezes onto the crowded bench. Conversations overlap like gentle waves. One table discusses the coming harvest. Another debates whether wolves have returned to the forest. Someone insists the price of wool will rise before winter. Someone else confidently predicts exactly the opposite. Neither possesses convincing evidence. Confidence has never required proof. Travelers are welcomed enthusiastically, not because they bring exotic treasures, because they bring news. A merchant arriving from York, a pilgrim returning from Canterbury, a messenger riding between market towns. Each carries stories from beyond the village, sometimes astonishing ones. A great cathedral is rising somewhere far away. A king prepares for war. An unusually harsh winter has struck the north. Whether every detail is accurate remains delightfully uncertain. News travels from mouth to mouth. Along the way, facts occasionally receive unexpected improvements. Entertainment requires very little. A man sings an old ballad learned from his grandfather. Another produces a small fiddle. Someone begins clapping in rhythm. Soon half the room joins the chorus. Nobody worries about perfect performances. The songs belong to everyone. Many tell stories of Robin Hood, King Arthur, ancient saints, or local heroes whose accomplishments quietly grow larger with every retelling. Evening after evening, legends slowly become history. Or perhaps history slowly becomes legend. Games appear as well. Dice roll across worn wooden tables. Simple board games emerge from leather pouches. Archery contests may be discussed for the coming Sunday. The church occasionally disapproves of excessive gambling. Villagers occasionally ignore this advice. Human nature has remained surprisingly consistent. Women also visit the alehouse, though often in different ways than popular fiction suggests. Many alehouses are actually operated by women known as alewives. Brewing ale at home begins as ordinary household work. Some women become so skilled that neighbors gladly pay for their brew. What starts as cooking gradually becomes business. Long before modern companies, entrepreneurship quietly thrives beside the fireplace. Of course, arguments sometimes erupt. Someone drinks slightly too much. Someone insults another man's sheep. Someone questions the quality of another family's barley. Voices rise. Benches scrape across the floor. Fortunately, most disagreements end with apologies rather than swords. A medieval village is too small to remain angry forever. Tomorrow, everyone still has to work together. As darkness settles outside, candles flicker softly across weathered faces. Laughter drifts into the cool evening air. Beyond the tavern windows, the village grows quiet. Inside, the day refuses to end just yet. Tomorrow morning, the fields will once again demand aching backs and muddy boots. But for these few precious hours, neighbors become storytellers. Workers become musicians. Strangers become friends. And ordinary life feels just a little less ordinary. Perhaps that explains why the humble village tavern mattered so deeply. people did not gather there simply to drink. They gathered to remember they belonged to one another. Imagine arriving in a medieval English village as a complete stranger. You have no family here, no friends, no one knows your name. For a brief moment, that sounds wonderfully freeing. Until you realize something rather uncomfortable. Everyone is watching you. Not because they're suspicious. Well, not only because they are suspicious, but because a medieval village is a place where nearly every face is familiar. A stranger stands out like a peacock in a flock of chickens. Within an hour, someone has already guessed where you came from. By sunset, 3 different versions of your life story are quietly circulating through the village. By next Sunday, even the priest probably knows your favorite color. Privacy, once again, remains centuries away. Unlike modern societies, medieval villages depend less on written laws and more upon unwritten expectations. Everyone knows them. Nobody needs to explain them. Children absorb them almost without noticing. If your elderly neighbor's roof collapses, you help rebuild it, not because anyone pays you, because next winter, your roof may collapse instead. One good deed today may become your own rescue tomorrow. Reciprocity is the invisible currency of village life. The same principle governs harvest season. When one family finally reaches the perfect moment to cut their grain, neighbors arrive carrying sickles. Tomorrow, those same neighbors will expect your help. Harvest waits for no one. Rain certainly doesn't. Entire crops can disappear beneath a week of bad weather. Cooperation is not charity. It is survival. These unwritten rules extend into everyday manners. You greet people. You remove your cap when entering church. You respect feast days. You avoid disturbing your neighbor's livestock. And perhaps most importantly, you do not steal. Not merely because theft is sinful, but because everyone knows exactly whose goose just disappeared. There are remarkably few mysteries in a village of 200 people. If a chicken vanishes, suspicion rarely travels very far. Community pressure can be surprisingly effective. Very few people wish to become known as the fellow who keeps borrowing things permanently. Reputation matters enormously. A hardworking man earns trust. An honest woman earns respect. A family known for generosity receives help when hardship comes. Knee another. Good character functions almost like wealth. It opens doors that coins sometimes cannot. Naturally, the opposite also proves true. Lazy workers quickly gain unpleasant reputations. Habitual liars find fewer willing listeners. Those who constantly argue may discover neighbors becoming strangely unavailable when assistance is needed. Nobody formally announces these consequences. They simply happen. Village justice often begins with whispered conversations long before any court becomes involved. The church strengthens these unwritten rules. Every Sunday, the priest speaks about honesty, charity, humility, forgiveness. Not everyone follows these lessons perfectly. Human beings have always possessed remarkable talent for ignoring excellent advice. Still, the weekly reminders shape community life. Even festivals carry expectations. During weddings, everyone contributes something: food, music, labor. At funerals, neighbors gather not because they must, but because grief belongs to the entire village. When illness strikes, others help milk cows, harvest grain, or care for children. Not every village behaves perfectly. Arguments certainly happen. Old feuds sometimes last generations. Boundary disputes erupt. Families compete. Jealousy occasionally poisons friendships. Medieval people are, quite reassuringly, human. Yet despite these flaws, the unwritten rules usually hold, because breaking them carries invisible costs. Perhaps nobody finds you, perhaps no judge appears, but trust, once lost, can take years to rebuild. Modern historians studying manorial court records often notice something fascinating. Many disputes never concern great crimes. Instead, they involve wandering pigs, broken fences, grazing rights, missing firewood, arguments over whose cow damaged whose vegetable patch. Small problems in very small communities can become surprisingly important. As evening settles across the village, a widow struggles to carry firewood home. Without speaking, two neighbors quietly lift the heavier bundle. No applause follows. No medals are awarded. Tomorrow, someone else will help someone else. That is simply how life works. Perhaps this is the greatest unwritten rule of all. Nobody survives alone. Not through winter, not through famine, not through ordinary life itself. And in a world where every harvest is uncertain, where illness arrives without warning, and where tomorrow promises no guarantees, trusting your neighbors may be almost as important as trusting God. Imagine that it is the middle of January. The trees stand completely bare. The fields that only a few months ago shimmered with golden wheat now lie silent beneath frost. Even the birds seem to have abandoned the countryside. The village feels strangely smaller, not because the houses have moved, but because almost everyone has retreated indoors. If summer is a season of labor, winter is a season of endurance. For a medieval villager, winter is not merely cold. It is a test of every decision made during the previous year. Did the harvest produce enough grain? Was enough firewood gathered before the first snowfall? Did the salted meat survive without spoiling? Has the roof remained watertight? Every mistake made during autumn now quietly returns for inspection. Unlike today, there are no supermarkets, no heated homes, no emergency deliveries arriving tomorrow morning. Whatever sits inside your cottage is all you have. Inside the little timber house, the fire never truly goes out, or at least everyone desperately hopes it doesn't. Keeping a fire alive is far easier than starting a new one. Hot embers are carefully buried beneath the ash overnight. Each morning, someone gently breathes life back into the glowing coals. The fireplace is more than comfort, it is survival. Without it, the cottage becomes dangerously cold within hours. Meals grow noticeably simpler. Fresh vegetables have mostly disappeared. Instead, dinner often consists of thick barley porridge, salted pork, dried peas, beans, dark rye bread, occasionally a little cheese. If the family planned well, perhaps smoked fish still hangs from the rafters. Luxury during winter is not abundance. Luxury is simply having enough. Children spend more time indoors, not because anyone has invented school holidays, but because frozen fields offer remarkably little work. They help twist rope, repair baskets, spin wool, feed the chickens, carry kindling. Even the youngest family members contribute. Idleness remains an expensive habit. The adults rarely rest either. Winter simply changes the kind of work. Tools damaged during harvest finally receive repairs. The blacksmith enjoys one of his busiest seasons. Broken plows, bent sickles, worn horseshoes. Everything is sharpened, straightened, or rebuilt before spring returns. Women spin astonishing amounts of wool, hour after hour. The spinning wheel hums quietly beside the fire. Thread becomes cloth. Cloth becomes clothing. Every shirt, every blanket, every cloak represents countless patient hours of work. Outside, travel becomes increasingly difficult. Roads turn into rivers of mud, or freeze into rutted tracks harder than stone. Merchants visit less often. News arrives slowly. Entire villages may pass weeks with almost no visitors. The world beyond the next hill begins to feel wonderfully distant. Illness also becomes more dangerous. Cold cottages, poor nutrition, crowded living conditions, all help disease spread. A simple cough can become frightening. The village priest visits the sick carrying prayers. The local healer brings herbs gathered months earlier. Sometimes they help. Sometimes they simply offer comfort. Yet winter is not entirely bleak. Long evenings create opportunities impossible during harvest. Families gather around the fire. Grandparents tell stories remembered from their own childhoods. Tales of King Arthur, Robin Hood, saints, miracles, strange creatures said to wander forgotten forests. Whether every story is true hardly matters. The children listen with enormous eyes. Somewhere, a father quietly carves a wooden spoon. A mother mends a worn cloak. A grandmother spins wool without even looking at her hands. The fire crackles softly. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters. Inside, the cottage glows like a tiny island of warmth. Winter festivals also brighten the darkest weeks. Christmas has already become one of the year's great celebrations. Candles burn. Special bread is baked. Neighbors exchange what little they can spare. For one brief day, even the harshness of winter seems to loosen its grip. Modern historians studying medieval account books often notice something remarkable. The villages that survive hardest winters are not always the richest. Often, they are simply the communities that cooperate best. One family shares firewood. Another lends grain. Someone helps repair a damaged roof before another snowstorm arrives. Survival is rarely an individual achievement. It is a community effort. As February slowly approaches, the food stores begin looking noticeably smaller. Every remaining sack of grain feels precious. Every bundle of firewood matters. Yet beneath the frozen earth, something invisible has already begun. The days grow slightly longer. The afternoon sun lingers just a little more. A few birds cautiously return. Nobody celebrates these tiny changes. Not yet, but everyone notices. Because after every medieval winter, spring always arrives. And for the people of the village, that simple promise may have been the greatest source of hope they possessed. Picture an ordinary Wednesday morning. Long before the first rays of sunlight reach the rooftops, the village is already awake, not because the crops urgently need harvesting, nor because the church bell has summoned everyone to prayer. Today is market day, and for many villagers, it is the most exciting day of the entire week. After 6 days spent working the same familiar fields, people finally have a reason to leave home. Some will walk only a mile. Others will travel 10 or even 15. A journey that might take half the day. The roads slowly come alive. A farmer pushes a handcart loaded with onions. Another leads 2 stubborn pigs that appear determined to visit anywhere except the market. A widow carefully balances baskets of eggs wrapped in straw. The village blacksmith straps several newly forged horseshoes to his wagon. A shepherd guides a noisy flock of sheep down the muddy lane. From every direction, people slowly converge upon the marketplace. Unlike modern shopping centers, The medieval market is anything but quiet. Long before the stalls officially open, the air fills with voices. Horses snort impatiently, dogs bark, children laugh. Merchants shout greetings across the square. Somewhere, a rooster loudly announces his opinions on absolutely everything. The market itself is astonishingly colorful. Bright bolts of dyed cloth flutter gently in the breeze. Deep blue, rich crimson, warm saffron yellow, colors that most villagers rarely see inside their own simple homes. Nearby, a potter carefully arranges freshly fired bowls. Next to him, a cooper displays sturdy wooden barrels. Farther along, a leather worker hangs belts, boots, and pouches from wooden beams. Every stall offers something different. Every merchant hopes today will be profitable. Food naturally dominates much of the market. Fresh apples, cabbages, leeks, turnips, honey, butter, cheese wrapped in linen, smoked fish brought inland from distant coastal towns. Occasionally, there are spices, tiny cloth bags containing pepper or cinnamon, worth astonishing amounts of money. Most villagers never buy them, but they enjoy walking past, breathing in scents that seem to belong to another world. Money changes hands constantly. Though not always in coins, bartering remains perfectly ordinary. A woman exchanges 2 wheels of cheese for a sack of barley. A carpenter trades handmade stools for iron nails. A shepherd offers wool in return for a sturdy cooking pot. Negotiation becomes an art form. Nobody accepts the first price. That would simply seem impolite. Surely you can do slightly better. Every conversation begins exactly there. The marketplace also serves another purpose. News spreads faster here than anywhere else. A merchant from London describes growing trade. A traveler mentions fighting near the Welsh border. Someone claims the king plans new taxes. Another insists wolves have been seen in nearby forests. Whether these reports are entirely accurate remains wonderfully uncertain. Rumors travel almost as efficiently as merchants. Musicians sometimes appear. A wandering minstrel begins singing heroic ballads. Children gather instantly nearby. A juggler tosses wooden balls into the air. Someone trains a performing monkey. For few precious hours, the market becomes something more than commerce. It becomes entertainment. Even the church quietly approves, provided nobody forgets their prayers. Not every visitor arrives to buy. Some simply enjoy watching. People observe unfamiliar fashions from neighboring villages, compare livestock, discuss weather forecasts with astonishing confidence, arrange marriages, hire farm laborers, settle old disagreements. Entire lives quietly change beneath the open sky. For young people, market day holds particular excitement. A young man notices a smiling girl selling woven baskets. She notices him noticing. Neither speaks immediately. Fortunately, the market returns every week. Romance, like farming, often rewards patience. The local lord also benefits. Every merchant usually pays a small fee for the right to sell goods. These tolls help maintain roads, bridges, and occasionally, the lord's rather comfortable lifestyle. Taxes, it seems, have always possessed remarkable longevity. As afternoon slowly fades, the crowds begin thinning. Unsold goods are packed away. Coins disappear into leather purses. Carts creak toward home. The roads once again fill with familiar neighbors. Only now, their wagons carry new tools, fresh food, interesting gossip, and perhaps one or two unnecessary purchases back in the village. Children eagerly ask what happened at the market. Parents describe exotic merchants, Funny performers, strange rumors, remarkably expensive spices. Life quickly returns to its ordinary rhythm. Tomorrow, everyone will once again rise before dawn. The fields will still require plowing. The animals will still need feeding. Nothing has truly changed. And yet, for one lively day each week, the medieval world grows just a little larger, a little brighter, and a great deal more connected. Perhaps that is why Market Day mattered so deeply. It reminded even the smallest village that beyond its familiar hedgerows, an entire world was quietly waiting. Imagine finishing 12 exhausting hours in the fields. Your hands ache. Your boots are coated in thick mud. Your back feels several decades older than it did that morning. The sun has finally slipped below the horizon. And now, there is only one place many villagers want to visit. Not the church, not the manor, certainly not another field. The alehouse, to modern ears. An alehouse sounds suspiciously like a medieval version of a noisy sports bar. In reality, it is something far more important. It is the village's living room. Unlike today, most homes are small, dark, crowded. Many contain only a single room shared by the entire family. Entertaining guests indoors is often impractical. The alehouse solves this problem. Here, neighbors gather after work, not merely to drink, but to talk. Every evening, the building slowly fills with familiar faces. Farmers, carpenters, millers, blacksmiths, travelers passing through. Even the village reeve occasionally appears. Everyone eventually ends up beneath the same smoky roof. The air smells pleasantly of wood smoke, fresh bread, roasting onions, and naturally, ale. Lots of ale. Now, before imagining medieval villagers staggering around in permanent drunkenness, there's something important to remember. Ale is often safer than water. Many wells become contaminated. Streams carry waste from livestock. Brewing gently boils the water during preparation. The result is a weak ale, low in alcohol, consumed by nearly everyone, including children in some households. Think of it less as modern beer and more as medieval table drink, the alewife. Usually, the woman who owns or manages the alehouse works tirelessly. She serves wooden mugs, keeps the fire burning, prepares simple meals, collects payment, and quietly listens to every conversation. If anyone knows every secret in the village, it is almost certainly her. Tonight's supper is wonderfully simple. Thick vegetable stew, fresh bread, perhaps smoked bacon if supplies allow, a wedge of cheese, nothing luxurious. But after a long day's labor, it tastes magnificent. Around the tables, conversation flows constantly. One farmer complains about stubborn oxen. Another worries that late frost may damage the barley. Someone insists wolves have returned to the nearby forest. A traveler claims London now has streets busier than anyone can imagine. Whether that last story grows slightly larger with each mug of ale is difficult to determine. Games also help pass the evening. Men throw dice. Others play early board games. A few compete in friendly wrestling matches outside. Children chase one another around the yard until sleepy parents gather them home. Some evenings, a wandering minstrel appears. His lute fills the room with music. He sings heroic tales of King Arthur, Roland, or brave crusaders fighting beneath distant eastern skies. The audience listens quietly. Many villagers will never travel farther than the nearest market town. These songs become their window onto the wider world. Not every evening remains peaceful. Occasionally, arguments erupt. Perhaps someone accuses another of cheating during a game, or disputes whose pig wandered into whose cabbage patch. Fortunately, most disagreements end with loud voices, not drawn swords. Village life depends too heavily upon cooperation for lasting feuds. The alehouse also serves practical purposes: hiring workers, finding apprentices, arranging marriages, negotiating land rentals. Even local officials sometimes announce important news here after church. In many ways, business happens as frequently as entertainment. Modern historians studying medieval manorial records often discover alehouses appearing again and again, not because they caused endless trouble, although occasionally they certainly did, but because they sat at the center of the village life. They functioned almost like community centers, meeting halls, restaurants, hotels, and newspapers, all under one roof. As the evening grows later, the candles burn lower, one by one. Eat the barley. Villagers finish the last of their mugs. Benches scrape gently across the wooden floor. Goodbyes are exchanged. Tomorrow, everyone rises before sunrise once again. The fields are patient, but they never wait forever. Outside, the cool night air greets them. Stars stretch silently across the medieval sky. The village lies peaceful beneath the moonlight. The alehouse door slowly closes. Its laughter fades into the darkness. Until tomorrow evening, when the heart of the village will begin beating once again. Imagine that you are 18 years old. You have worked in a field since childhood. You own almost nothing. A few clothes, perhaps a wooden chest, maybe a small knife. And yet, everyone in a village keeps asking the same question. So, when are you getting married? Not because they are hopeless romantics, quite the opposite. In a medieval village, marriage is rarely viewed as the happy ending of a fairy tale. Instead, it is the beginning of a working partnership, a new farming business, a survival strategy. Love, if it arrives, is considered a welcome bonus. Most villagers marry surprisingly young, women often in their late teens, men a little later, usually after proving they can support a household. There's little point marrying if you cannot feed yourselves. A wedding begins long before anyone enters a church. Families quietly discuss possibilities. Neighbors exchange opinions. Parents observe hardworking sons and respectable daughters. The village is small. Everyone already knows almost everyone else. There are remarkably few surprises. Courtship itself looks very different from modern dating. There are no candlelit restaurants, no bouquets arriving by courier, no handwritten love letters delivered across great distances. Instead, a young man might help repair a girl's father's fence, or volunteer during harvest. Perhaps they happen to meet regularly at the weekly market, or exchange shy smiles during church services. Romance exists. It simply grows much more quietly. The church plays an important role. Marriage is considered a sacred sacrament. The priest carefully announces the couple's intention to marry, not once, but on 3 separate Sundays. These announcements, known as the banns, give anyone the opportunity to object. Perhaps the couple are secretly related. Perhaps one is already promised elsewhere. Perhaps someone knows a rather inconvenient truth. In a village, secrets rarely remain hidden forever. If no objections arise, the wedding day finally arrives. Unlike modern weddings, The ceremony itself is surprisingly brief. The real celebration happens afterward. Neighbors gather outside the church. Children scatter flowers across the path. Friends cheer. Musicians begin playing pipes and drums. The entire village seems determined to attend, not because invitations were mailed, but because weddings belong to everyone. The feast begins. Long wooden tables filled with bread, cheese, roasted meat if the family can afford it. Fresh ale flows generously. Pies appear. Honey cakes delight the children. For many villagers, this may be the finest meal they eat all year. There is dancing, simple circle dances, country reels. Laughter echoes through the village long after sunset. Even the oldest villagers clap along with surprising enthusiasm. Someone inevitably sings slightly louder than everyone else. Someone else forgets the words halfway through. Nobody seems to mind. Gifts are practical. A cooking pot, a blanket, a wooden stool, perhaps a chicken. Romantic? Not especially. Useful? Absolutely. Every item helps the new household begin its life. Marriage also means responsibility. The newlyweds receive no magical happily ever after. Tomorrow morning, the cows still require milking. The chickens still expect feeding. The fields remain just as demanding. Life changes remarkably little. Except now, two people face those challenges together. Children usually arrive quickly, not simply because large families are desired, but because survival depends upon them. Infant mortality remains heartbreakingly common. Many families lose children before they reach adulthood. Those who survive eventually help with farm work. Every new child becomes both a blessing and another pair of hands for the future. Modern historians studying medieval court roles often discover surprisingly ordinary marital disputes. Arguments over land, property, livestock, inheritance, not endless romantic drama. Instead, the same practical concerns familiar to couples throughout history. Love exists, certainly, but everyday life occupies far more attention. As evening settles after the wedding feast, the music gradually fades. Guests return home carrying full stomachs and happy memories. The newly married couple quietly enters their little timber cottage. It is modest, small, far from luxurious, yet within those rough wooden walls, a new household has begun. Tomorrow, they will wake before sunrise. Together, they will work, struggle, laugh, perhaps argue occasionally, raise children, grow older, and if fortune smiles kindly, one day they will watch their own son or daughter stand before the same village church, beginning the cycle once again, because in a medieval village, marriage is not the ending of the story. It is simply the next chapter.